Stories, dramas, movies, and television have a unique grip on us as a species. But what is it that is so special about them? Why do we find them to be so engaging?
Are you not entertained?
Why do we mourn over the loss of people who, if we were thinking strictly rationally, are completely fictitious? We humans are strange creatures. Not only do we have the furthest stage of development of consciousness, but we are also highly individualized and highly social. Rather than being creatures of mere instinct responding to stimuli as they appear, we have the ability to think about the past and the future. It appears that there was an evolutionary advantage for creatures such as ourselves to think about things rather than simply react to them. Everywhere, always, environments are changing. Climates shift, terrains erode, predators flourish or go extinct, food supplies vary.
Fish are friends, not food.
Prospective mates may be in short supply, etc., etc. There is a reason maps must be redrawn continuously. Nothing is permanent. While instincts are curated over eons of time, becoming useful rules of thumb, there will always be the chance that those instincts are slightly misaligned to the situation at hand. If my instincts lead me to avoid intrusive sounds or unfamiliar objects, they could help protect me from unwittingly running into a threat. However, this unknown thing could benefit me. Food, water, friend, or mate could be on the other side. If I only run, I avoid the potential threats, but I also never reap the benefits that could come from engaging with things. Curiosity appears to have arisen in many species around the planet. Rats suppress their initial fears and carefully explore new objects. It can be gathered by the fact of their continued existence that this trait is proven to be advantageous for the species. If it were not, if curiosity led to more death than survival and successful breeding, the trait would have been removed from the gene pool. Creatures that began to learn from their surroundings could capitalize on resources that more timid species would not gather. Curiosity appears to have benefited many species. Whether this came by increasing the likelihood of finding food and mates, it was successful enough to continue passing these traits on to their progeny. Homo sapiens maintained this sense of curiosity and gained something more: the ability to run risk-free simulations via imagination or language. We communicate not only what we can see right now, but also tell stories about the past and the present, and simulate different worlds of experience. We do this to first test the environment in our minds, effectively reducing some of the risks inherent in being curious in the real world. What does this have to do with movies? Well, I'm glad you asked. Have you ever noticed what happens when a lecturer who's reading a PowerPoint word for word, effectively making you wonder why you need him there in the first place, switches away from the pre-written material and begins telling you a story? You will likely find that your attention is heightened. You're no longer bored by this amateur.
Just eat the damn oranges!
Suddenly you want to hear what he has to say. Almost instantly you switch from disconnected to attentive and intrigued. Why? Because you want to know how it all ties together. You want to hear what he learned, and in return, you learn the lesson from him vicariously. A successful lecture does not necessarily need to be entertaining or funny, though making a journey feel like an adventure is a great way of helping someone swallow bitter medicine. However, a good storyteller does need to convey the message in a way that keeps your attention and tells you something useful about the way that the world works or how you can operate in it. How do you know if it was useful? An answer might be something like, if I apply this, my life will be less miserable. This is the reason we tell stories. This is the reason we listen to them. Stories update our map of the world. They help us learn vicariously, so we do not fall into a pit unnecessarily. They help us augment ourselves in domains that we have not yet entered, giving us a path forward where instinct and past experience are insufficient. They can teach us something as simple as where the food is, or something more complicated such as how to be the type of person who never runs out of food. People need stories. If hard-won wisdom is not shared with us by our neighbors, we are doomed to remain islands of isolated experience, hoping that our instincts and intelligence are enough to keep us alive. Just as the rat has inherited the benefit of the trait curiosity, so too have we inherited the ability to listen to our elders, who share their stories around the campfire. They tell stories of great adventures, of heroes from our distant past, of the battle of the gods, and as they contested over what values were more important than others. Movies and television are modern-day campfires. It is where we go to listen and learn. We are drawn by instinct to emulate and learn from those around us, and to listen to what they have to say. Sharing food increases long-term survival by engaging others in a game of reciprocity. It releases oxytocin for interpersonal bonding and connects you with another group of people who are more likely to protect you. It does not take much thought to understand why sharing food strengthens our connection to one another. But what about the sharing of stories? Sure, stories engage us and entertain us, but why? What are the stories doing for us that make them engaging? I would argue that just as sharing food became an adaptive strategy for Homo sapiens, so too is the sharing of information. It turns out that oxytocin is also released when we tell stories. Local legends, myths, stories, and movies activate our need to attend to information and engage us in interpersonal bonding. Stories are the metaphorical analog of getting food. Whether you realize it or not, you go to the theaters to put yourself in the shoes of a hero and a villain, and to learn what it means to juggle between conflicting premises. If a character does something that you find irrational, or something unbelievable or inexplicable happens, you will likely stop caring for the story and say something like, "It was alright." If the story really gets something wrong, at least according to your premises, you will likely experience strong negative emotions toward the story. This feeling of dissatisfaction is experienced not simply because the story gave you something you did not want to experience. I doubt anyone wanted to experience the ending of Avengers Infinity War. Lasting unease and disgust for a story comes when you fundamentally cannot reconcile why it ended the way it did.
And who has a better story than Bran the Broken?
Go yourself.
My lord?
Go yourself.
My lord?
Go yourself.
Aw.
A good storyteller, be they an author, campfire spokesman extraordinaire, or screenwriter, gathers essential parts of a pattern he sees in the world, then tells us in dramatic form something that we may know intuitively. They gather the necessary ingredients, plot, theme, characters, and a world in which to set the stage for the story. They then run the simulation. Though the narrative may be entirely fictitious, they tell their narrative with a set of rules that apply to that universe. If something changes within that world, say a character changes their mind, or a new technology is created, a good storyteller will account for that change. That is their job, to tell you a story that has an understandable through line. Suppose I were to tell you a story about a poor man who loves to cook grilled cheese for his family. This young man saves up every penny that he has so that once a month he can make a good meal for them. Imagine if, all of a sudden, this character invents a magical technology doodad out of his ass. I, as the storyteller, have an obligation to tell you how in the hell he made that thing, and what the world-building ramifications are for its existence. If I do my job correctly, you will leave the story with a better understanding of something. You could leave inspired by human intelligence and ingenuity, or you could leave asking, if this guy has no money to his name, and he lived solely in his apartment, and he doesn't hang out with anyone, how could he have made that device in the first place?
Gandalf?
Go yourself.
When you find yourself thinking about a film in a positive way, it likely signals that you learned something new. You may have intuitively known some of these things, but for some reason, when you watch someone act out your assumptions in the story, you find that it updates your map of the world a little bit. You go from knowing something intuitively to having a characterological example. This is progress. Before a philosopher comes along to give an explicit understanding of something, they're first informed by the lower order levels of meaning, such as poetry, music, art, games, role models, and embodied experience. This new, explicit level of understanding provides another layer to the architecture of our understanding. We listen to each other and tell stories to change the way we see the world and how we act in it. We do not merely go to be entertained, though, as mentioned previously, having a good time can help the medicine go down more smoothly. We go to the movies to learn how to live. We look for role models, we look out for villains and try to understand them. We go to watch an author create a simulation on what might happen in X scenario with Y types of people. If the author speaks to us deeply, likely because they have helped us develop a new understanding, we remember that story, we tell others to listen to it, and we show it to our children and our grandchildren. It is the stories that last over time that are most likely to be a meaningful and accurate representation of the world. So when we see a story continue to be shown across generations, it may be safe to assume that there is something in it worth paying attention to. While this is not a perfect rule, most rules do have exceptions, it is a way to determine the quality of a story. For example, Homer's Odyssey, not to be confused with Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey,
We're Greeks from Ithaca.
was a story about a man desperate to go back home to his family. The epic had been passed down orally for nearly 400 years before Homer put it in writing. Why was it that this story was significant? While a cynical man could merely say, "It is only the winners who choose what stories should be passed down," as if you could force over 15 generations of people to remember something meaningless to them, another take could be that there was something about Odysseus' story that spoke to people enough to continue telling their children about him. So the next time you hear someone say something like, "It's just a kid's movie," as if we should give our children poor examples of how to live, or feed them the cotton candy equivalent of a nutritious meal for a story, or "It's just a fiction, if you care about historical fidelity, you're obviously xenophobic," as if fictions were not one of the ways in which we tell something true about the world, you can sincerely tell them,
Go yourself!
or if you are feeling more generous and are interested in enhancing the dialogue surrounding the importance of storytelling, you can share why good stories matter. We tell them to avoid dying and to learn how to live. We tell them to remember our past. So filtering it through a lens that makes it more palatable to a modern audience causes us to lose the distinctions between what was then and what we have now. Bad stories point people in the wrong direction. It is equivalent to saying, "Water ahead," when there's actually a pack of wolves. Storytellers have a great power. They change the way we see the world. And with great power comes an immense amount of responsibility. Ignoring the significance of storytelling is to deny ourselves one of the things that makes human beings so unique. If we insist on disrespecting our stories for the sake of political gain or short-term profit, something that is distinctly different from attending to long-term profit strategies made by people who desire to live with themselves and have respect for the dollar attached to their name, if we ignore the problems we have and continue to give money to disrespectful slop. Yes, I am talking about you, Deadpool and Wolverine, The Last Jedi, and basically everything made by Disney over the last decade.
You've got to do better, Senator.
We can expect our cultural dialogue to continue to crumble. For if we have no stories to orient us together, be they religious, cultural, political, fictional, or otherwise, we may continue to speak the same language, but we will not be able to speak the same tongue. Our maps of the world will be too different. If we continue to share fractured, inaccurate, or agenda-driven maps of the world, we will find ourselves ravaged by wolves, where we were promised water. Pride at the cost of relationships was once considered a sin. We are now being told that it is the most sacred value. Should we be surprised when we see narcissistic children incapable of maintaining relationships when conflict arises? When their role models are people like Elsa, the narcissistic queen who abandons everything until society changes? Should we be surprised when we see young adults wrestling with the challenges of our historical inheritance, when the only story we know how to tell about power is that it is tyrannical, corrupt, hiding something from us, and preventing us from being truly free? When we hold up heroes like Moana, who, rather than celebrating her inheritance of being part of something larger than herself, we find that the high note of her iconic song is not, "I am a voyager," but rather, "I am Moana? I am myself, the modern-day Yahweh, reborn as a Pacific Islander teenage girl with a chicken."
I am that I am.
Moana's inheritance is, of course, flawed. Her culture does need an update, as do all of our inherited structures, because environments change. However, her stated aspirations are not to join that structure and be a part of updating it. Her journey is entirely focused on self-actualization. Just as with Captain Marvel, Supergirl, and basically any other female lead character put to screen in the last decade, her lesson is, remove the inhibitor. You are perfect the way you are. You are the most important thing in the world.
Never forget that, no matter how powerful you become.
People who have the audacity to complain about participation trophies will gladly show their children these stories, not realizing that they contradict their stated principles. While of course, people should have the freedom to self-actualize, and to say what they think even if it is in direct contrast to what the rest of the world thinks. It is a good thing that the West has developed rights that make this possible. However, just as demand for conformity leads to suppressed expression, self-expression without regard to those around me also has its trade-offs. Just as too much water can drown, too much self-reflection can lead to madness, arrogance, and isolation. There's a reason that the story of Narcissus, where we get the word narcissism, ends with him starving to death because he could not bear to lose the sight of his own reflection. We have lost our way because we have lost the ability to respect our inherited stories and to tell new ones worthy of passing down. We revel in reminders of the past, but we do not know how to create what made those things possible. We celebrate modern reinterpretations, oftentimes looking at the past with a furrowed brow. We ask, how could they be so ignorant? The bones of our ancestors contain nutrients that can give us life. If we plant them wisely in a garden, our past can carry us forward into a better future. However, if we raise the corpses of our fathers to be spat on, puppeteered, and paraded around for the butt of a joke, or burned, that sustenance will be lost. Fortunately, wisdom is an ever-flowing river. Though we can divert the stream or move away from it, it will always be available for those who seek it. We live in an age of remakes and bastardized sequels with nothing to say but, don't you remember this? The stockpiles of food have nearly been empty. The Ouroboros has nearly reached the back of its head. God only knows what happens when it reaches it. For the sake of ourselves and our children, we need good stories, both old and new. If we eat only cotton candy, we should not be surprised when we find ourselves getting sick.